Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Jesus Mary. Thank you so much for saying yes to the interview today. So what I want to speak about is God's principles, which you first spoke about actually last year in the yurt when we were here. Yeah. And I loved the principles because for me it was simple and clear. And also I feel like in my own partnership and in other partnerships, sometimes we have our own values. Yeah. And we bring our values in, but they're often different values. Yeah. And then we're trying to align these values, and we can sometimes be quite righteous with our values. Mm-hmm. And we want to hold on to our values.
Well, that's probably why we make them our values, because we are right. We feel they're right, and therefore we're righteous in terms of our defence of them as well.
Yes, yes. And so when we had the principles last year, I was very excited because I thought, great, that's going to take some of that debate away.
Is it?
No. No. This is why I'm here today. Because we've been having a lot of talks about the principles, but for the sake of people who haven't got the principles in their heart yet, and we're intellectually analysing the principles and debating the principles and putting them into the family so the kids can also follow them. They also, the first two especially, so I'll just say the first one is...
Can I just firstly comment, though, about that comment?
Okay, yes.
If the principles are not in your heart, then they're no longer principles.
Okay.
So now are you trying to work out something rather than you knowing something, right? So the problem that most people have when it comes to hearing principles is they then try to intellectually apply those principles. So this is the first point where we go wrong. Because we try to, we think they're good, we listen to it and we go, well, that's moral, I can understand that. Or we go, well, I get that makes a lot of practical or logical sense. So it makes sense that we do something about that. But what happens generally is we then try to impose those principles upon, like a family situation, for example, without there being any emotion involved and without our emotion agreeing with our mind. Now, the biggest problem with that is that if your emotion does not agree with your mind, then you're going to have some major issues like actually living in harmony with the principles. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that when the emotions, and when I say emotions, this includes your beliefs, your emotional beliefs, and it also includes your addictions, right? So they're all a part of your emotions. When they're saying to you, no, that I want that principle to apply the way I emotionally want it to apply, not the way God's emotions are about it, but rather the way I feel about it. So when you talk about the principle of love, for example, you want love to apply the way you think love should be and you feel love should be, not the way God feels love should be. So straight away, by trying to intellectually apply principles, we're automatically in a state now where we're really creating a facade on top of our true feelings about that principle. Does it make sense of it?
Yep.
So the net result of that then becomes that we are so dedicated intellectually to trying to apply the principle, but emotionally we often are in complete disharmony with the principle as God feels the principle to be. And now what have we got? Whose principles are we now applying?
Yeah, we're applying mine again or the partner's.
Correct.
And it's very subjective.
Correct.
Rather than being God's principle of love.
Yes. Correct.
Or you get to a situation where you think, okay, this is how I think it should go according to love. And then you get, but what happens here? I don't know how that works. How do we do love here?
Yes.
Because I'm trying to intellectually apply something that my soul's not in harmony with. And now there's a new situation that I didn't even think about yet. And I don't know how to apply it.
Yes, and that's what's been happening. So
there's a lot of confusion in that.
Yes, and then
arguments and fights and
because it's loving to do this, but actually it's the way I feel it's loving, not the way God feels it's loving.
That's right, and maybe I can give an example of that in terms of your life, in terms of a discussion you had with us when you were in Australia. Remember, just before you went home, you had that discussion with us about Andy not letting somebody who takes drugs drive his car.
Yes.
And you feel that was very unloving of him, right?
Yes.
And I'm going, why is that unloving of him? Like, that feels to me to be pretty reasonable. Like, why would I let somebody who takes drugs drive a car when obviously now they're under the influence of drugs potentially? And that would, of course, then cause potential problems that may arise as a result of them breaking those laws, God's laws in this case.
Yes.
And then, of course, they're also breaking the laws of the land.
Yes.
The laws of the land say fundamentally that you can't drive under the influence of any drugs or alcohol, and yet they're also breaking those laws. And so there's actually authority issues involved from God's principles perspective that you were feeling just offended that Andy's made that decision for you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, there's an example of sometimes when somebody actually is adhering to a righteous principle where the other person's going, well, I don't feel that's right. You're controlling me now, or you're...
Why isn't it my decision?
Why isn't it my decision? Yeah. And all that, And so we get very mixed up then under the circumstances of what we should do, and we get offended about things that from God's perspective, God's looking at going, why are you offended? He, living in harmony with the principle.
But we know why you're offended. And it's because there's other things from your past that you haven't dealt with, where you feel like my free will wasn't respected by a man. Yeah. I wasn't valued by a man. I wasn't listened to.
He didn't listen to me.
I didn't feel equal to the man. He didn't view me as an equal. And so then... And
then I felt controlled.
Yes.
That's right.
So
He's trying to control me. He's trying to, determine what happens to my life. And I've got my friends, and why isn't he caring about my friends, even if your friends have their issues, know? And if those issues include issues where they're breaking God's laws, of course, that then raises conflict, usually between partners, between husband and wife or whoever's in partnership with each other. It raises these conflicts, which actually all stem from the fact that the actual principle is not in the heart of both persons.
Yes.
The fact that there's even a conflict about the principle is indicative of the fact that both persons don't have the principle in their heart, not just one.
Yep.
As we bring all that stuff to the situation, and then we try to have a principle. We bring all of our unresolved emotion, and then how do I apply a principle here?
Yeah. And you've got to be real careful that you're not just trying to apply the principle in order to avoid you resolving all the emotions.
Yes.
You understand?
Okay. And this is a common thing that people do. They go, oh, I like that. I like this principle thing. That'll just give us a rule book, and then I won't have to feel all that junk
those
from
emotions.
the past. Yes.
Don't have to deal with any of that.
Yes.
Just adhere to the principle and you'll be right. And fundamentally, that's how religions came to be.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, religions on earth came to be through this process of people feeling that they were in agreement with a principle, like a moral principle. Let's say you should only have sex with your husband or wife. Let's say that's a moral principle religions people thought. And so what they then do is create a religion that adheres to that principle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Not understanding the full version of the principle, which is actually... From God's perspective, the full version is sex was created between soulmate pairs and no one else really. So, there's a big difference between those two principles, but the religious version of it, which was created by people who wanted to obviously maintain families and keep families together and keep growing nations through families, because most people realise nowadays that when you have families that break up, then obviously it makes it very, very difficult for a nation to grow, for a nation to appear stable. And so, they enforce that principle from a religious perspective, even though all the parties involved don't really know what God's principle is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So very important to realise that when we're talking about these principles, you're not firstly going to apply them, be able to apply them intellectually, in a way that actually is in harmony with God's principles, and you're also not. You've got to be careful that you're not wanting to apply them just for the purpose of controlling the other party, or controlling your emotions, or controlling arguments.
Yes. That's what I was doing.
So one reason why you want to interview us about the subject is because you're trying to control your arguments.
Yes.
And
correct.
And already, already that's out of harmony with love. Really.
So is this interview over? We go home now.
Yeah. So we can drill down into the principles, which we can do a bit today, but it's very important to understand those basic facts about these principles. God's emotions, which enforce God's laws, his emotions are the principles.
Okay.
And so unless you can start to feel God's emotions about things and feel that accurately, you are very, very much going to be open to interpretation of how a principle should be applied.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what if one partner is doing their best to feel the emotions of God's principles and the other partner isn't? How does that work
firstly,
in a family
that's
union?
rare.
Okay.
Most times, and this is where it comes down to a lot of self-reflection and introspection, where you've got to look at yourself. Because quite often what we find is that one partner thinks they're trying to deal with their emotions, but actually they're not yet dealing with their emotions in a manner that God expects them to deal with the emotion. So in other words, they don't understand the principle that governs how humility yet.
Yep.
And so then what they do is they have what they call their emotions, which are fundamentally their addictions, and their, what would you call it?
It's sort of the response to not having your addictions met
which is really a tantrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sort of feeling unloved because my addiction isn't being met, or feeling alone because my addiction isn't being met, but not actually dealing with what is my addiction and what
the real feeling,
what fear and grief am I trying to avoid with that addiction?
Yes.
So in other words, not being truly humble to what's going on. But they might say, but I feel my feelings, whereas the other person might be more stoic and be saying, I don't have feelings very much or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're also not trying to falsify the fact that they feel feelings.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you end up with this sort of thing where one person or in a family, or sometimes it's more than one, who hear divine truth, like a parent and children or something like that, and then they think they're feeling their feelings when as yet they haven't learned how to be truly humble in that process. And then they start implying that the others who are yet to begin feeling their feelings are in a worse state, and in some ways denial of feelings is a worse state than feeling some. But if you're just feeling your anger and your tantrums and your annoyances and your frustrations and which are all the top layer of feelings, which has nothing to do with grief, nothing to do with healing these things, then at the end of the day you're still not doing it God's way either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So of course that's not going to work, and you're just going to end up with more arguments generally. And no solution.
Yeah, and often we argue because we're trying to get someone to join agree.
And they don't have to.
And when someone has the principles in their heart, there's less arguing, but there is more certainty, there's more definite, there's more actions taken, there's more feeling, there's more humility. So, it's just important to recognise how much I want to argue for this rather than feel about it, and feel what I feel is the principled thing to do, and how am I going to do that after I feel. Yeah.
So an example of that, of love, is fundamental principle of love from God's perspective is to never ever meet another person's addiction, ever. That's a fundamental principle of God's love. In a family situation, husband and wife situation, partner situation, generally the whole relationship initially got established based upon how much they met your addictions.
Yep.
So now when a person starts learning about divine truth, God's truth, they start going, well, I'm going to start trying to give up my addictions. But they usually start by trying to give up meeting somebody else's addictions while at the same time keeping their own.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Common problem.
Yeah. So in other words, I'm not going to meet your addiction anymore, right? That kind of feeling. But I still want you to meet mine.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of hypocrisy in the way that's applied. And then, of course, it might appear to the person who's doing this that they're living more in harmony with the principle, but they're still not living in harmony with the principle as God sees the principle. So you can see there's a lot of areas here. If we are not connected to God and we can't feel, there's a lot of areas for misinterpretation, hypocrisy, and other things that then just cause more difficulties in a relationship.
Disharmony, conflicts.
Yeah, because it's very subjective to that person.
Yes.
So then you start bringing that in, and then that's when the arguments about this is what I feel is loving.
Yep.
So, for example, if you had one partner who firmly believes that it's loving to leave their mess around because it makes them more creative, and they know where everything is, and it's a subject of their creativity. I've read articles on this. And then you have another partner who's wants everything very clean, orderly, and then the other partner.
And they're often called by the other partner
OCD, or controlling, or so how. So in that regard, they both think they're being loving,
and both of them are not.
Both of them are not because they're
right.
both in their addictions.
Both in their addictions, and also they're not yet understanding or feeling God's requirements in terms of personal responsibility, which is an aspect of love, a principle that we need to follow, as well as like allowing creativity, which is another aspect of love. The two can work hand in hand. In fact, they work best hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So in other words, when you become a disorganized person, and usually disorganization begins internally, emotionally disorganized internally. All your emotions are disorganized, and so that then reflects upon the fact that all of your environment is disorganized. When that happens, you're just basically living in harmony with how you feel in the moment, which most people then say that's in harmony with divine truth, but that's not completely in harmony with divine truth. That actually is not in harmony with the principle of self-responsibility. If my emotions are rage and I want to visit my rage upon all of you all the time, then I'll be completely out of harmony with the emotions or the principle of self-responsibility. So, and also the principles of love. So in those circumstances, what I'm really doing is convincing myself I'm doing the right thing, and then using divine truth as a tool to justify me doing the thing that I already believe is the right thing, while at the same time neglecting the actual principles as God feels them for that particular thing.
This is where your point about being self-reflective is so important in each party in that partnership, to say, well, why am I so disorganized? My excuse is it makes me creative. It allows my creativity. But is that really the truth?
Well, it's not the truth.
It's not the truth.
From God's perspective, God's a very organized being. That's why he has laws. That's why there's so many of them, because God's very organized about everything. But God is the most creative being in the universe at the same time as being very organised. Yeah. So you can see straight away that if I'm creative but disorganised, then I'm not in harmony with that principle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you would answer that. No, it's not the thing that enables my creativity. Often people have a lot of feelings about restriction and control and feeling suppressed.
Which is really
in their past. They're angry about those things in the past, so now they don't want to feel any whiff of that, and so they want that makes them spread out everywhere and be disorganised, and then they feel like, now I'm free to create.
I live a free life, isn't it wonderful type of thing?
And any of your tidiness triggers all my feelings about feeling suppressed and stifled, and so you're the problem. Your tidiness is the problem.
You're OCD and you're out of harmony with God's principles, but that's not true.
And on the other side of that, some people are trying to control their feelings through controlling everything in their environment.
Correct.
And that can be quite oppressive. While God is very ordered and very tidy and very clean in the way that she creates things, she's not doing it in a sense of rigidity to control all of her creations and to control all of her feelings. And so
that's the main point. God doesn't do it to control her feelings. She does impose laws to control creations, but only to impose limits that are naturally there and to help everything live within its limits. So there's loving reasons why God's controlling everything through law.
But not micromanaging them. Yeah.
Not through her emotions. She's not going, oh, I'm angry about that now. So this is, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm angry with you, Yvette, now. So now I'm going to impose this extra rule for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So would you say with the principles, is it better to kind of put them to one side in a way and feel through the emotions, or still have them in the background?
Definitely don't put them to one side.
Okay. Good. Good.
Ever. The key is going to be having to do with your emotions. Now, in other words, the key is humility. And this is where most people, when they hear divine truth, don't do very well.
Yes, and that's great, because I really want to ask about humility. That's the one principle when I talk to people, they always say, what actually is humility?
That's right.
Like, what does it mean?
Yeah. Can we just talk about this one side or centre, or because the principles, if we're really humble, or if we're even just hearing divine truth for the first time and having some grasp of it, it's important that we understand the principles are a part of God's feelings. Mm-hmm. So that's my aspiration, but it's also recognizing I'm not there yet until I deal with some feelings, and I'm going to grow towards them if I have the principles, if I'm aspiring towards them. So it's not something I hear and then I implement and then I be humble about it. It's more I'm aspiring towards it, I'm seeking it, I'm making decisions that I think are more in harmony with it, but I must be humble in that process for these principles to become a part of me.
And be okay to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
As long as you're correct. Yes.
Yeah. But there's an additional thing with the aspiration. The aspiration only comes from your faith. So what you're going to have to do is learn to have some faith in the principles.
Yes.
And this is where most people actually fall down, because they don't have any faith even in the principle of humility. Yeah. So if you look at the fundamental way we, grow with God, it's about being so humble that you can handle anything coming at you and you can correct yourself easily, right? That a person who's able to be that humble progresses very easily towards God. A person who's not humble, arrogant, self-opinionated, keeping with their own opinions all the time, will find it very, very hard to progress towards God. That's a actual principle that is a part of why emotions need to be felt. Now, if you look at the fundamental principle of humility, which is what you asked for, you can see that unless I get that principle in my heart, that my emotions, feeling them, not the layer of emotions which are all the tantrum ones, but actually feeling the raw, really harsh emotions that I find difficult to feel, but me feeling that this is the best way forward. I've got to get to the stage where I actually believe and have faith that this is my best way forward. Now, most people don't have that, and we're taught not to have that on earth, actually. We're taught to be arrogant so that we can suppress our emotions, so that we don't go into the real raw stuff. And so an example of that is, in the example we gave earlier, Mary gave earlier, where let's say the husband's saying, "I know this is the thing, I'm going to make the decision." The wife goes, "Well, you're not listening to me now." That kind of situation. Yeah. Now you can see on both parties are not feeling specific things. Does that make sense? Yeah. And they're choosing to enact a principle, supposedly, but the very first principle you need to enact before any other is the principle of humility.
Okay.
Which they're not doing.
Yes.
So how then can they receive information from God about any other principle, when the very way that you receive information about a principle from God is via humility?
Yes.
It's impossible, right? So you can't then receive any truth about the situation. You can't receive any love from God about the situation. You can't receive any other principles which are all to do with truth and love, like responsibility, authority, and all these other principles, because the very thing that would enable you to feel all of those things, your humility, is not there.
Okay.
So now we're in a place where we're trying to enact a principle, but the very thing that would enable us to understand the principle in the first place isn't present.
Yeah, okay.
And if you think about it logically, it makes a lot of sense even before we're even connected to God. The way God's designed our soul is there's things precluding our understanding. So if we take the example of my husband doesn't want my friend to drive the car, but I think he's being controlling. If you had allowed yourself to sit down and cry, I feel like I'm being controlled. Actually, I feel like, oh, my dad didn't even pay attention. All the things that were actually driving that arc up that you had.
Yes.
You can see that you literally are clearing something away to think more reasonably about the situation that's right there in front of you.
Yes.
You can before then you're just caught up in that managing that feeling, really.
Yes.
When you have that feeling, now there's some intellectual and emotional space, literally, for you to say, well, does he have a point in this particular situation about picking me up from the airport?
Yes. Instead of being righteous in now I'm feeling controlled, so that's overpowering. Something that's actually quite logical.
Yes. Yes.
Conversely, from the male perspective of that, you could go. Let's say I'm the man in this situation. Let's say, and what I would have to do is I'd go, right. Do I really think our finances are our finances, or are they mine? Do I really think our car is my car, or is it our car? What attitude do I have towards the woman in the relationship? And it could be that what has precipitated the idea of not doing it, rather than the actual principle that God would impose, which is don't let somebody who's breaking my principles drive your vehicle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a simple thing like that. So it could still be my self-righteous analysis of the situation that's driving me to say the rule, even though the rule is fundamentally correct from a behavioural perspective.
Yes.
We're still not in harmony with the principle.
Yeah.
Because the decision's not being made based
right
on the
reason.
principle.
Okay.
It's being made for personal reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So quite often you see this in relationships with sexual relationships and stuff where, things are not, they're supposedly, purportedly based on the principle, but actually they're more based on our personal feelings than they are on the principle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I've been finding over the last year is that it's based on our personal opinion more than what God is feeling about this.
Correct.
Yeah. Is there a time when, if you're humble with the emotions, you go away and you have a cry about it and you come back and you can still not truly understand it from God's perspective because you've been influenced by a spirit to what they might be feeling?
Well, you can only be influenced by a spirit via your own injuries anyway. So, yes, that is true, but at the end of the day, it's still the same principle that governs how things happen, and that is it has to be something inside of yourself to cause another person, whether they're seen or unseen, to be able to influence you in some way. So what is inside of you still needs to be looked at. And also, it's not as simple as just having a single cry about an issue, because most of these issues are well embedded in our soul from a lot of different experiences in our childhood and also throughout our life, not just from one. It's a rare situation. There are times when there is a one-off situation that caused a lot of things to happen, such as, let's say you were just abused sexually once in your childhood. Well, that's going to have its own effects for sure, and that they will be quite severe effects. But compare that to being abused every day. You can see straight away that you're going to have a lot more to deal with from being abused every day than just by being abused once, right?
Yeah.
So both situations are severe, but one is much more severe than the other in terms of what we're going to need to deal with. And we can't sort of expect that these kind of things will disappear overnight because of two reasons. One is there's the situation that occurred that caused the initial harm, and then there's all the things that we did afterwards based on that initial harm that also need to be faced as to why I did them, what decisions I made,
what beliefs I decided to
what
carry
beliefs
on.
I
and built on in my life and made more decisions about based on avoiding that harm again, and as we have a career, as Jesus calls it, of sin, that we're really actually undoing as we aspire for this principle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't expect that you can sort of grasp initially the principle in its whole God's flavour of the principle in its whole sense. It's going to be something that you're going to have to work towards, but it's going to require your humility most of all.
Okay.
And unless you truly grasp the principle of humility, you're not going to be able to do it.
Okay.
It's just as simple as that. You're not going to be able to do it because your emotions are telling you don't go there all the time. And it's the emotion telling you not to go there that is the block, you could say the resistance that we have to the principle of humility.
Should we talk a little about humility? Because you've made a couple of important points about humility even just now in the last 10 minutes. You know, you've talked about humility is not having our tantrums. It's not having our self-indulgent feelings. Do you know what I mean by self-indulgent? Yes. Oh, I just feel so hurt.
I need comfort. I just have too tired now and I need my comfort.
Yeah.
You know,
I just need, or even crying about feeling that everything's so hard for me, or it's hopeless.
Feeling sorry for yourself.
Yes. A lot of pity.
Yes.
There's a difference between grief and pity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is not in harmony with the humility principle. These sort of, I'm crying because I'm not getting my own way. I'm crying because I want someone to see how much they've hurt me. I'm crying because it's all just so hard for me. I'm just crying about just the situation we're in, you know, without really looking at anything
and
deeper.
of course, the underlying feeling inside the person with all of these is, I'm not to blame for it.
Yes.
It's not my responsibility.
fault,
It's what my partner did. It's what my children did. It's what my parents did. It's what it's what God did. It's what everything but, like, generally looking at your own true feelings that are now within you.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. So this is not in harmony with the principle of humility, all these sort of other feelings. The other thing you touched upon is the willingness to give up my perception of things in favour of God's. This is a key part of humility. And it's very difficult for you to feel your true hurt or injured emotions unless you are seeking God's opinion about these things, because otherwise you tend to end up in self-indulgent feelings.
Yeah. And just staying in those surface feelings rather than going deeper and then realising, that's it from God's perspective. That's how God feels about it.
Yes. And what does God see in me, or in the way I'm behaving, that is in error? And why do I want that error? There's these feelings I don't want to have. Yeah. And so a very important part of the principle of humility is seeking truth, actually. This is where all the principles are so intertwined.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
If you think about it, the average person who's attracted initially to divine truth is not attracted because of a relationship with God, and not attracted because they like the idea of humility, or not attracted even that they like the idea of truth. They're attracted because they have pain in their life and they want some resolution.
Yes.
And we acknowledge people have pain.
In a lot of ways, yes, they have the pain, but they want the resolution by working out some kind of magical way of being able to go through the pain without actually having it.
Yes.
You know?
Be free of pain.
And they're hopeful that receiving God's love
We'll take that all away.
Will be the magic bullet, or the magic, should we say, not bullet, because that's
the magic
pill,
elixir.
Magic potion. That's going to make it all just disappear. Now, you know, in order to receive God's love, there needs to be a humble state in the individual, and that's a primary requirement of the law that governs whether you can receive God's love or not. And so when you're in the state that you're just trying to avoid your feelings by listening to truth, you are not in a humble state. So you're automatically in disharmony with the principles that govern whether you can receive God's love or not.
Okay.
So it's a big issue. And so what happens is the people who normally come initially and listen to divine truth, this is their focus. Like, I've got some pain and I want to learn about it. I want to understand it. And most of the time we want to understand it better, unfortunately, because we don't want to have to feel it. We just want to understand it so that we can overcome it without having to feel it very much. Yeah. That's our general idea. And when we hear somebody talk, oh, there's Jesus there talking about, you know, and most people, of course, don't believe on Jesus, but at the end of the day go, well, what if he is? And then, you know, he might have some answers about how I can avoid my feelings.
Acknowledge them, but also not have them. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Acknowledge my good ones, you know, like, you know, yes, he talks about desire and passion. This is all sounding good.
Yeah.
My desire, my passion, I don't care about anybody else's. That's obviously not in harmony with the principle. That's what people go, I am very important to focus on that. That's really good. I like that bit.
Yep.
But I don't like this other bit that says I'm going to have to feel all my pain or be prepared to feel and acknowledge and work through all my pain. I don't like that bit. And then they say, well, hopefully, and this is something that happens a lot, where people go, yeah, Jesus doesn't know what he's talking about, really. What we really need to do is do that a half that he said that was good, that sounds good, but ignore the half that he said that sounds bad, because he doesn't know about that. He's just a bit of a masochist probably, or sadist really. So we do ignore that part, but we apply this part.
Yes.
And of course, people who do that do not ever experience a relationship with God, and therefore they never feel the benefit of a relationship, and therefore they go after a few years of that, they go, it doesn't work, just like everything else doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's go back to my stoic denial of my feelings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So principles. So we're trying to put a principle into the family, and we're talking about a certain way of living in the family, but yet we haven't got it in our hearts yet. So then it actually could go on for many weeks or months until we actually really truly know how to put it into the family.
Yeah, and you know, principles. God is an infinite being, and His principles have this sort of infinite flavour and quality about them, where you're always learning more about them. Now, of course, the more you become, if you became at one with God, you would be in harmony with God's love. And so that now would also automatically erase a lot of the disharmony that would occur with you not understanding the principle. But until the point you're at that point where you're at one with God, you're in a state of sin, of different types of sin. Even a person in the sixth sphere still has sins with God. So you're in different types of sin. And so it's about being prepared to see you're in different types of sin, humble enough to see that you are and the reasons for them, the emotions that you hold, the beliefs that you hold that are driving your sins. And the fast way with God is to acknowledge those sins, be honest with God and yourself about those sins, and ask God in a sincere, longing manner to forgive you for those sins. Now you can change quite rapidly if you do such things. But in order for that to happen, you must acknowledge the sin as God sees it to be, not as you perceive it to be. And this is where it also then becomes tricky, because most people think, well, that wasn't a sin, when God's feeling is that it was. So the average person goes, when I'm meeting somebody else's addiction, so if I'm in a relationship with Mary and I'm meeting her addictions, the average person thinks that's fantastic. Like, that's not a sin. That's how you have a relationship.
Yep.
You know, Mary meets mine, I meet her demands, she meets my demands, we're all happy. That's good. Most people think that's fantastic. From God's perspective, it's terribly destructive to the relationship and the individual progress of each half of soul, in a relationship, you're two halves trying to come together. And from God's perspective, meeting the addictions is the worst thing you can do to establish truth in the relationship. The very worst thing you can do. Worse than hitting somebody, actually, right? Because at least when you hit somebody, they know straight away you did something wrong. But when you are meeting each other's addictions, you are actually doing things that are wrong, and both of you are thinking they're right.
Yes.
That's harder to deal with than when it's obvious that something's wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's all this sort of insidiousness that then creeps into the relationship, based upon the fact that we want our addictions met and we're not being humble. And this sort of establishes a pattern in a relationship. And then if one person tries to break that pattern, the other person's going to go, well, you're doing the unprincipled thing now. I'm giving you your addictions, but you're not meeting mine. Mm-hmm. So for us to get back into some sort of righteousness, either we both have to meet each other's addictions, mm-hmm. or we both have to never meet each other's addictions again. Now, the second one is the real one that we need to do, but the first one is what people do.
Yes.
They want to meet each other's addictions again.
So they're happy.
So they're supposedly happy. It's temporary, of course, and also destructive for the soul, because to do that, you have to live in a place of untruth, which is breaking another whole. Well, in fact, every loving principle is based on truth. So you're breaking almost every principle that you can ever think of by being in untruth. And then you wonder why 6 months down the track, 12 months down the track, or it might be 10 years or 20 years, or for many people doing this, it even is after they've died and passed that they realise, oh dear. Yeah. Oops. What a mess. And
then they see their kids often, we have a lot of spirits who come to us and go, now I see my kids doing this thing that I did, and then their kids, and could you sort that out? And I'm like, well it's up to them now.
And they can't, it's hard to feel your own guilt when you see it all being reflected in the next generation and the next generation, and you're up in the spirit world and you can't do anything about it now. Because you didn't deal with it when you're on earth. Yeah. You didn't address it then. And you can't do anything about it because most of those people can't listen to you and can't see you and can't talk to you.
Don't believe you're there.
Don't believe you're even there. And so you then learn that you're only... the guilt is you having to feel what you did wrong now. The very thing you should have done on earth in the first place is what you need to now do.
Maybe we can give an example of this addictions in a partnership, because I think that could help. You were talking about when we're trying to break down this codependence.
Yep.
So say we're in a partnership and, well, we are, but say we have these injuries where Jesus has the feeling that I have to tell him make him feel like a wonderful man at all times.
I need propping up.
Yeah.
Yes.
My feelings need propping.
He needs to feel valued by me.
Yes.
And if Mary doesn't want me sexually and prop me up emotionally and do some cooking and cleaning for me, I don't feel valued.
Yes. I hear this a lot.
Yes. And but on the converse, I feel like, well, I'm doing all this for him, so he should provide freedom for me, financial freedom. I shouldn't have to think about all of that banking, and I shouldn't have to. Yes.
I shouldn't have to work. I'm already working for him, right?
Yes. And mechanical things, could you please come and fix that?
The car's broken.
Look at that.
So
yes.
he'll fix that.
The blender won't work. Come here.
That happened to me this morning.
The door doesn't close.
I did not know that. And so then if I'm in that situation and I hear divine truth, I'm like, oh, actually, I think this is quite codependent. I really shouldn't have to prop Jesus up anymore. No, he should deal with his issues with his mum. I'm not going to tell you.
Become a grown-up man and have your own.
You're
work
not
out
wonderful
how to have your own feelings.
like all the time. I'm not going to keep telling you you're wonderful or reassure you that it really went well, dear, or all of these things that you want from me.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to meet that addiction anymore, and I'm doing God's way now.
Not really.
But then I still, when I have to take the car to the mechanic, I still call him, or I still think, well, no, you've always done the banking. You need to keep doing that. See how hypocritical
You've always
I'm
earned the
being.
money, so you got to keep happening.
Yes. So now I'm expecting him to deal with his addiction, saying it's been an addiction I've had as well. I've been doing this for him, but I'm not looking at what I'm still demanding from him.
Yes.
And this is very important aspect of humility, that I look at both of these things at once.
Okay.
And I value them equally. And if anything, I value my addiction, dealing with my addiction more.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. Only you can change you.
Yes.
He can't change you. Only you can change you. Yeah. Right? So it doesn't make any sense focusing on his problems. What makes sense is you're focusing on yours.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's hard enough to change yourself.
Yes.
because you have to feel certain emotions to change yourself. But if now you're trying to change the person you're with as well, well, now you're going to try to force him to feel his emotions in order to change. That is instantly out of harmony with the principle of love and free will.
Okay.
He needs to choose for himself to change his feelings.
Yes.
Not because you've put pressure on him to change his feelings. Right?
Yeah.
So we can see straight away that a lot of people instantly get it, even though they say they're listening to divine truth, they're instantly out of harmony with it by what they choose to do then in their lives when they impose their principles without humility.
Yeah.
Very
So if the car's broken down and there's a flat tire, instead of calling instantly the guy to come and rescue and save and do the tire, you have to sit
if
there.
I'm self-responsible, I'm going to have to...
Now, there's a lot of men who will want to come running to a pretty girl who's got a tire to fix.
Yes,
for lots of reasons.
Happen. It happens.
Including your own husband. He'll want to come too. Because he gets a reward emotionally for doing this. But can you also see you're teaching yourself that you don't know how to do these things?
Yes.
You're teaching yourself that you can't look after your own life without the man being present in it. Yeah. You're teaching yourself a number of very bad things, actually, through not firstly taking action to the point where you've failed and then get somebody to help you. Right?
And one of the first, I remember I had a situation with the tanks at home, and Jesus knows all about our plumbing and how the tanks go together. And I usually go and run off to him when there's a tank empty. And this one day, I was like, no, I'm going to sort this out. The first thing I had to do, I tried to figure it out. Then I had to sit on the ground and cry about feeling how I'm just useless. I'm so incapable. And then I got up and fixed the tank, and I fixed it. Yeah. But there was all of this stuff in me that I was just avoiding because by him coming and fixing it every time. And a lot of it's because since childhood I was taught, you can't sort out mechanical things.
And that's Daddy's domain.
Things. Yes. Yeah.
This is how Daddy feels like a good dad.
And it's also how Dad feels like a good dad. It's also his addiction.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So after the crying, because this happens with me quite a lot, the electricity will go or the plumbing will go, and I call Andy. And which actually I used to be able to do 25 years ago. I could change a tyre quite easily because I was on my own, but then I've become reliant.
Well, no, there's also addictions in that. You see, when there's definitions of love that drive you to go away from the things you know what to do and not do them anymore. So an example of that is, let's say you could change a tyre 25 years ago. Somebody taught you. I don't know who did.
Yeah, my mum.
Your mum did, ironically.
Yeah, I know.
Not your dad.
She was very...
So anyway, mum taught you how to change a tyre. So somebody taught you how to change a tyre. You know how to do it. You're comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
No trouble. As long as I've got a spare that's in good condition, I can change my tyre. So it's a bit problematic nowadays because hardly any cars are supplied with with spare tyres. But back then it was a lot easier. It was great. And car manufacturers out there, stop doing that. But anyway, so anyway, you know how to change the tyre. But now you're in a relationship, and the way that you feel love is going to define what you want him to do for you now. So if you feel love is somebody doing some things for you that you find hard, then you're going to feel that they should do those things, and then you will feel more loved.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Correct.
So it's not that you actually even believe you're incapable that drives it. It's that you want to be loved by the action being taken.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is actually out of harmony with the principle of love, because you're forcing somebody to do something that you can do for yourself.
Yes.
Right.
And that I've also been responsible for having it. And also it was me that also got the fly attack.
Yeah, you're driving the car. You obviously
it was my
got the flat.
problem, but then I want somebody else to fix it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now there's times when we do need help because we don't know what to do.
Yes, for sure.
And under those circumstances, a humble person would go, I really have no clue what to do now.
Yeah.
And then I need to ask somebody to help me.
Yeah.
But many times we do know what to do, and we have no intention of doing it, because to do it for ourselves would let the other person off the hook for loving us. Our definition of love. It would let them off the hook for it.
Yeah.
So it's like, ring Andy, because then you feel loved by Andy.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to do it yourself, nobody's loving you.
Got you. Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's a major problem. And this is why a lot of times we do know what to do, but we still demand the other person does it in a relationship.
Yes. Yeah. So the best thing to do is in that situation, like when the water goes or electricity, because I actually don't know how to do the electricity, to have a cry first.
Well, no, there's a far better thing to do first. Learn how they work.
Before there's a problem.
Before there's a problem, the loving thing to do would be to know how they work before there's a problem.
Okay.
Like if Mary wasn't interested in knowing, because I was always the person solving the problem with the water.
Well, and there was a lot of actual historical things as well. I felt like you designed the water before I got there.
Well, I didn't. Well, other people did.
Yeah,
but if I designed it, it would be better than it was.
There's a lot of what I'm saying is there was a lot of things not even relating to plumbing that caused me to be resistive to the plumbing.
And caused Mary to be resistive to even learning. Like Mary was taught from a very young age by her father that women are a bit useless when it comes to all mechanical and practical things. Mm-hmm. A woman's job was to cook, clean, provide all this emotional support for the male.
And even the emotional support of making him feel useful by doing the things.
By letting him do it rather than her.
By telling him I needed him.
Yeah. Now, a person who's truly thinking about all that would have in advance gone, I don't know how to use my own water system. That's a problem. Mm-hmm. Like water is like, you need to drink water every day. Within a few days, if you don't have water, you're dead. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a big problem that you don't know how it works.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
So a person who's truly self-responsible, in other words, in harmony with the principles of love and self-responsibility, they'd say, I need to learn how it works. I need to understand it myself so that I can fix it myself, right? And, I need to get the education from somebody.
Yes.
So obviously I need to go to somebody in advance of there being a problem, go to somebody and say, can you please educate me how this works? And I'll take notes and I'll be diligent in understanding it. And I'll, if it takes me 5 pages of notes to understand how it all works and I draw diagrams and the person draws diagrams, then this is an essential requirement for my learning. And now, when the water system fails,
I'm there.
Are you going to have a cry when it's...
No.
Because you've already done a lot of the preparation to ensure that you understand. And interestingly enough, if you had done the preparation, you would have probably had the cries then.
Yeah, that's what I found.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And not when the emergency, the crisis comes about. So what I see a lot of people doing is they go from... It's sort of like they go from crisis, feel their emotion, to another crisis, feel their emotion, go to another crisis, feel their emotion, without going, maybe I've got a big problem with I like crisis in order to grow, rather than actually growing by choice.
Being proactive in
being
my growth.
Proactive and sorting myself out in advance type of thing. And so that there's a lot of principal problems with that. You understand? And that demonstrates there's a principled problem with that. So it's really interesting, I find, how people go, so Mary gave you the example of her having to cry because she didn't know how to do it. If Mary had gone through the process of learning it beforehand, she would have probably had her cries then, which wouldn't be in an emergency situation anymore. It would be more a relaxed situation in order to allow the tears and whatever. And then by the time she came to deal with that particular problem, all of those feelings are all being addressed. Her feeling of inadequacy, her feeling that she doesn't understand, all that would have been addressed. And so now when there's a crisis, I can solve that.
Yeah.
And that brings about a lot of confidence in the person.
Yeah. And that goes, I would say, across the board with everything in the relationship. So the laundry, the cleaning, which is, normally in our society... There's a lot of men who have
no idea how to do the cleaning.
Yeah.
No idea. Like every time, like the rare occasions that they've got to wash their own clothes, because a lot of women do it for them, they have, they don't know how much of this do I put in, how much of that do I put in, what type of settings do I make, all this kind of stuff.
Where is the detergent?
And why is this washing machine so terribly designed? Why isn't it more simple than it is, like that kind of thing? all the things the woman has had to put up with for years, and he hasn't recognised it. Why do you need a new washing machine? You know, that kind of thing. But when he's coming to use it himself, he's going, well, there's a lot of problems with this thing. It's badly designed. It doesn't really work very well, and it's all hard to understand and use. And then he goes, well, and then there's a temptation. Let's put it back on.
Yes. Yeah. And does this go with as well, you know, so like if you've got a small child who's waking up at night and coming into the room,
exactly.
Usually it's the mum that's putting them back to bed, or usually the mum suffers and has the child in bed with them and doesn't sleep well. No. So again, is it like this equal sharing of actually, no, it's also the dad's responsibility?
Of course. It applies in every aspect of life. If you've brought a child into the world, then the two people involved are equally responsible for the child's upbringing and also for anything that happens to the child. So naturally, the principle would be, well, why isn't it equal? If she's being kept up all night and he's not, then there'd have to be a good reason for it. An example of that might be, well, he is going to work for a whole day the next day, and she isn't. So she can have a sleep during the day, whereas he can't. So then you might make some adjustments based on that principle where he's already doing something for the family that the rest of the family aren't doing. So that then allowances need to be made for the fact that he's doing that.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's not, it should be equal. The principle is, well, if Mary is doing some jobs that I don't do for expedience reasons, and I'm doing some jobs that Mary doesn't do for expedience reasons, we should firstly both know how to do those jobs. But it might you might determine in a relationship that it makes more sense for me to go and do that, you know, whether I earn higher income or whether it's easier for me or whatever. I go and do that job, and Mary goes and do this other job that she finds easier for her, right? That does make sense, but it's not making sense as soon as we don't know how to do them.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. But
and I think, you know, historically women have been like, well, I'm going to work, so you should get up with the kids, and there's no even the comment, you can sleep tomorrow. That doesn't often play out with a baby, so there has to be some awareness of how the mum's life actually is.
Correct.
Not just like, oh, you're home all day, sort of lazing.
But obviously, let's say he's a pilot and he's got to sleep, and you know, or you know, there's a lot of dangerous jobs men do. Women generally don't do as many dangerous jobs for lots of reasons. But there's a lot of dangerous jobs. They need to have their wits about them because it'd be very unsafe if they, you know, engage them tired, sleep deprived. Yeah. And so you've got to make these, love would make these, consider all these things. Yeah. So it's not right to say we should be equal even when the rest of your life is not equal. You understand what I mean by that? Yeah. So in other words, the woman who doesn't work at all is not going to be able to say to her husband who works every single day for, say, 8 hours a day, that their life is equal. For it to be equal, she would have to work 8 hours a day too, right?
Yes.
And it has to be for it to be truly equal, it would have to be an imposed job where somebody else tells them what to do, not where they're home telling themselves what to do. Does that make sense? Yes. For it to be truly equal. Yep. And if it was truly equal, where both of them had those kind of jobs, then certainly when it comes to looking after children, it should be truly equal too. Every second time it's my turn.
Yep.
Every time it's every other time your turn. Every other time my turn. And no matter how tired I am, no matter how exhausted I am, no matter what I got going on next day, because it's the same for the other person.
Yep.
Right. But a lot of us think of equality, but only again from our distorted perception of what we feel is right, just from our perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than from actually looking, we're incapable of looking at it from God's, and say, but what about, he's doing all that and you're not doing it? Or what about that? She's doing all that and you're not doing it. You know, like, so it's not equal here. Now, there are times in a relationship where you make, like I said, make the decisions that Mary will do some things and I'll do some other things. Quite often we do it
when we're traveling.
When we're traveling, we do it all the time. It's sort of like in the evening, in the morning, I've got to offload all the video. It's faster for me to do it. Mary doesn't know it as well as I do. She can still do it, but she doesn't know it as well. And it's very technical when you got to communicate with servers everywhere and all that jazz. that's my domain. I know how to do it. I don't. It's easy for me.
Okay.
It's easy for Mary to make us our meals.
In that context,
right? Really easy for her. It's easy for me too, but because I know how to do it. But it makes more sense for us to balance that out. So while she's making a meal, I'm doing that work. So we're both working.
Yep.
So that's equal. We're both working and getting to the stage of resolution of all of the problems. And quite often what I'm doing is I'm offloading that while I'm cleaning up something that Mary can't clean and other things at the same time, so that when we come to sit down for a meal, we're actually sitting down for a meal and enjoying each other's company rather than one person still working and the other person has relaxing time.
But what you're saying is you both know how to do those things. So it's not like you're just offloading it because the other person doesn't know.
That's
you actually both know, but you're doing it because actually it's going to be quicker.
And not with everything. Sometimes there's things that you really cannot do. Like if a woman's breastfeeding.
Sure, exactly.
He can't breastfeed.
No.
There are physical limitations within breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So how you'd have to then work out, okay, what do I need to do to sort of offload some of the responsibilities that come with breastfeeding that I can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
You know, that kind of thing.
Talking about the kids in beds, because I have a lot of people I know that are like exhausted mums. I see them so often. Just
common problem.
Totally exhausted. And they feel it's loving for the child to sleep in the bed because they don't want to offend them. They don't want to reject them.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not.
And mothers need to be a lot more honest about what their addictions are with their children.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
A lot of times mothers say, it's the best for the child.
Yes.
But actually the mother has a lot of desires to avoid intimacy with their husband if they're with a partner.
Frequently.
And so having the child in bed is a way to avoid that. Feeling that I want nurturance from somebody, not to give it, but to get it. And so I like sleeping with my child. I don't want to be the cold mother that my mother or father was.
Yes, I hear that a lot.
And so guilt and fear, that's really fear of harming your child, that causes them to then create a child who's very dependent and not very separated from the child.
You want the child to grow up to be an independent, creative person. By the time they're 2 or 3, they already should be able to express themselves, not be dependent on mum and dad for feelings. You know, they can feel their own feelings by this stage.
They need to know they're separate, like a whole person away from mum. And that's very that's part of God's whole design in them incarnating, is to understand themselves as
and
an
Mary's
individual.
only mentioned a few of the addictions. Hey, there's so many addictions that people have as to why they would sleep with their children. And we're not often very honest about any of them. So we say, we're being a good parent. In the guise of being a good parent, we're doing all this quite destructive stuff to our relationship and also to our children. And we're doing it in the guise of being a good parent. I'm a good parent, you know. But in reality, we're actually distorting and not applying God's principles. If you look at what God does with us, He allows us to learn through mistakes. He allows us to go through our own feelings. He doesn't nurse us every single day, every single moment of the day, right? He doesn't do any of that. It's not loving to do that. It's a personal addiction to do that, right? And so a mother who does that or a father who does that is in their personal addictions. Yeah. Now, sometimes the addictions include not wanting to be perceived to be a bad parent.
For sure.
Let alone being a good one. You know, like, so when people hear like, you know, things like, my child's never allowed to come in the bedroom. You know, like I've locked our bedroom door so our children can't come in or something like that. Now, why you would have to lock a door is pretty bad in the first place, because it means that the child doesn't understand their boundaries.
For sure.
So it already means that you've let the child have no boundaries, right? So you should never get to the stage where you have to lock something in order to prevent the child from accessing it, unless that thing is very dangerous and the child has not the intellectual or mental development to understand it's dangerous. So in other words, an electrical power panel, lock that door. the
swimming pool.
The swimming pool.
Yes.
You know, they don't understand the dangers. Their brain isn't developed yet. They don't understand the dangers of life-threatening dangers. So under certain circumstances, you're going to have to make these kind of decisions. But your own bedroom, by the time the child's by the time the child can walk, it should also understand its own limitations in terms of what the parents will allow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the child's got to a certain age where there's, like, say, 5, 6, 7, where there hasn't been any boundaries enforced,
tough now.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And they're trying to put the child back into bed, and the child's having a huge tantrum, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And
It's hard. Breaking the addictions you created.
Yeah.
Because the parent's responsible for breaking down the addictions the parent themselves created in the child.
Yeah.
Breaking the addictions you created, that's a difficult thing. You know, this is where a lot of parents don't realise by the time the children get to 5, 6, 7 years of age, a lot of times the parents are trying to break their own addictions that they created in the child before 5, 6, 7 years of age.
Yeah.
And that's important to do. From God's perspective, that's an aspect of self-responsibility to be a parent. If you've created addictions in your child, you should start trying to address them and fix them as well. And the older the children get, the more difficult that's going to become. Mm-hmm. You know, by the time the child's fully developed, teenager, you're not going to be able to restrict them physically, and you're not going to be able to. There's a lot. It's very, very difficult then, because you've allowed that problem to develop over years of their life. So it's going to be a difficult process to change all that, but you still should do it.
And how would you do that?
Well, it depends on the age of the child as to what you can actually get away with, in the sense of, you know,
what will work,
and why the child has the problems they have. So the very first thing a parent must do is deal with their own addiction.
Yeah. So if
you can't stop the addiction in the child that you created without first dealing with your addiction as to why you created the addiction in the child in the first place. That would be hypocritical.
Yeah, hypocritical and impossible, actually.
Yeah.
So if you've had your child sleeping with you from the time they were born until they're 5, and then you think, I don't like this anymore, you've got to go and sleep in your own bed.
Tired of the sleepless nights.
But you had them in there because you wanted to avoid intimacy with your husband, and you
felt guilty.
You felt guilty. You wanted to be a warm, nurturing mummy by someone else's definition.
You didn't want to help the child be responsible for its own feelings.
You felt needy for that child to give you a sense of purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now you don't actually want them to separate from you, but you'd like to get a good night's sleep.
Yep.
Yeah. And also there's other feelings like I don't want my child to have feelings. Like I don't want my child to cry, because then I feel like I'm a bad parent if the child cries. So in other words, you're absolving yourself of your guilt by sleeping with them.
Yeah. So if you've still got all of those feelings and you say, now little Johnny, you've got to go and sleep in your own bed.
It's not going to work.
The child's going to feel like, one, I don't think you really mean that. And two, I know how to get my own way. I'll just have a big cry because you hate it when I cry.
That's right.
And then you'll have me back in the bed.
Yeah.
And the child knows exactly how to manipulate that situation because you taught him how to.
Yes. Yes. And you taught it was reasonable and that it was fair and it was loving, everything you were doing, because that was your definition of love at that time. And now if you want to change it, you're going to have to change some things in yourself.
Yeah. The reason why you taught him has to be addressed.
Yeah. As you do that, your child will feel a number of things. One, initially they'll feel unloved because you taught them this was love.
This is love, yeah.
And now you changed it. So you're going to have to feel about that. If you want to love your child, you're going to have to feel your feelings of guilt initially and responsibility, but really face the fact that you've created something where now your child does feel unloved.
Not only that, the child's going to feel angry with you and feel like you're a bad mummy.
Yes.
You're terrible. Now, you used to do the good thing and now you don't do it anymore.
Yes.
What's happened to you? There's something wrong with you. What this divine truth is the reason for that. You know, that you're a bad mum and this divine truth thing is making you into a worse mum.
One of the biggest
that kind of thing.
ways to control a mummy is to say bad mummy.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because a lot of mums, like when that comes up, their whole life has been, I have to be a mum and it has to be a good mum.
Yeah.
But there's no idea in them of what a good mum is. And so, and it's not God's idea of what a good mum is.
Yep.
But if a child projects at their mum, you're a bad mum, this is where having God's principles or seeking God's principles is going to help that mother so much, because then she can have some perspective in the situation, but she's going to have to feel some feelings in that process.
And she can even say to the child, look, I was a bad mum.
Yeah.
From God's perspective, I was a bad mum. Me feeding all your addictions and doing everything for you and taking you here and there whenever you wanted and all, that was me being a bad mum. That's not what God did for me. God taught me how to become self-responsible, how to become self-reliant, how to actually do things for myself. And I didn't teach you to do all that. I taught you to be reliant on me to do all that. That was me being a bad mum. Now I'm changing that and I'm becoming a good mum. And I know you don't going to like it because you like all the things I do for you now. That was partly my fault, but it's also now partly yours, unfortunately, because you like it and you're going to have to stop liking it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a process.
Yeah.
It's going to take time
Yeah.
to work through the issue, yeah.
And as they get older, like when I was interviewing Eloisa back in Australia, I loved what she did with her kids and put them outside. I think it's brilliant. However,
she wouldn't have done it without our recommendation.
No, I can imagine.
She was at the time, she was so resistant to even correcting any unloving behaviour from her children towards herself, that she would just let her children hit her and abuse her and all sorts of things. So there are a lot of mums like this who would just let their children like run amok with the mother's life. And, she used to take them shopping, they'd destroy the shop and, she was embarrassed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
She, there was a lot of what I would classify as tolerant of very bad behaviour in the children. The children became overcloaked by spirits as well.
Yes.
And so frequently there'd be these teenage boys or girls influencing the girls or boys in the family into doing these really bad things, really quite evil things in a way. Like they would do things like get their poo and rub it on mum's bed and, things like that, just to annoy mum. The teenage boys who were controlling them just to annoy mum. Yeah. And the kids would just go along with all that. And there was no restriction, no penalty for this behaviour, no control of the spirits in the situation either. So it's taken Eloisa a lot of learning and a lot of questioning. She got to the point where she was so distraught herself that she didn't know what to do, and in the end we just gave her recommendation after recommendation. This is what you need to do to correct this particular behaviour. Now the children are teenagers, all of them, and they're viewed by the school as the most able, capable teenagers in their school almost, because of what Eloisa has done to change all of this over time. But it's taken from the time where they were 2 to them being teenager for her to make these corrections. And
as Eloisa would admit, there's still some things that are really not corrected in her kids. Moral issues.
Yeah. But it must have been quite a big thing a challenge for her, because when I do tell people about that, what she's done, a lot of parents go, "What? They put her outside for 2 years?
Yeah,
outside."
Well, they treated her so badly and treated her house so badly that she was running around after them all the time, and they would not stop. That she said, can't even live in the house anymore. You can live out in the veranda.
But we have to say they had their own tent.
Yeah,
they wanted to live out in the veranda.
They were camping for 2 years. And she didn't say you're outside for 2 years. She said when you can learn to respect the environment you have outside, then you can come in and try and respect the environment inside.
Yeah.
And it took them 2 years to even...
Well, not all of them, because
Archie came in.
The youngest, she started this with the first, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The youngest is going to probably respond the first because they've got the least amount of injuries. So he took him about 18 months and then he was good enough and caring enough of the environment and cleaning up after himself. By this stage, they were making their own meals, preparing all their own... They'd go shopping and buy their own food. She gave them a budget and they learned how to do that. And so they bought their own food, prepared their own meals and everything. By this stage, he cleaned up after himself, washed up after himself, did his own washing, did his own care, his own ironing if he had it needed for school, everything. And once he got to this stage where he liked it, he asked whether he can come and live inside, Mum, and she said, no worries.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So what would you recommend for people who don't have an outside area? Say they live in a flat and...
Well, tricky, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, difficult. You need to create something outside or some area.
Some environment.
That is restricted, where it's restricted from the parent having to deal with all of the things. But you can still see the focus has to be the parent dealing with their addictions.
Addictions of why they let.
So Eloisa had to do that.
Okay.
Because she would never have been even comfortable with the ideas that we presented with her without her dealing with some of the addictions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she would never have imposed them.
And can we say any type of restriction on your child, once you've established an addiction within them or an unloving attitude within them, any type of restriction, if you are not yourself primarily going to be humble about your part in creating that problem in the child.
Not just humble, but deal with it.
You've got to deal with it.
You deal with why.
If you place restriction on that child for them to deal with it, you are really sinning. You are a hypocrite.
You're being unfair. You're unjust. You know?
Yeah, it's a very important thing. So I wouldn't recommend anyone put their kids outside if they're not going to deal with the reasons why their child runs rampant over the household.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just trying to push the problem
onto
outside.
them.
And onto them.
Yeah. When actually you've created it.
You've created it, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you're not even modelling for the child what they need to do in order to deal with the issue.
Because the reality is, if you had been a good parent when they were younger, this would never have happened. There would never be a need for them to go outside. There would never be a need for them to be corrected with their bad, unloving behaviour if you had been a good parent. The key thing, though, you've got to bear in mind is that once the child realises that, they're going to say, yeah, you did all this to me. So it's not fair now, but now you've got to correct it all as a parent. No matter how bad you feel, and you're going to have to go through some bad feelings, you're going to have to correct it because it's for their sake. You know, if they grow up being this kind of a person, they're going to enter a relationship eventually, enter potentially a marriage, have their own children. And if they impose the rules they now believe to be good rules in the rest of their life, they're going to have a terrible life. You know, the law, God's laws, is going to it's going to be a bad life. And even if it doesn't look bad on the outside while they're alive on earth, when they arrive in the spirit world, it's going to be shocking for them. So you know, this is part of their education, realising, I've got to correct the mistake that I made for their sake, not just for my own. If I can't love them enough to deal with my own crap, my own problems, and while I'm trying to help them deal with theirs, then really I don't have a lot of love in me if I can't do it with children that I actually brought into the world myself. Then I don't have a lot of love in me for any correction of anything. You know,
it sort of comes back full circle to the start of our discussion of, am I seeking God's principles to obtain them inside of me? Because unless I am, anything I do with my child is just behavioural. It's just trying to restrict and control behaviour, and it's really not actually impacting on their spiritual, emotional welfare and having a long-term benefit to their future. I'm just teaching them to have a facade.
And I fundamentally have done that to them, and while at the same time requiring that they fix it and I don't have to. And that's like a very unjust thing to do.
That is unfair. That is bad mummy.
For sure. And if you've got one parent who is listening to divine truth or listening to this and going, that's me, I want to change this, I want to put some more restrictions in, I want to work on my addictions, and then you've got another parent who goes, no, what we're doing is loving, I like what we're doing, I don't want to change. How does that
that
work?
Works out fine. It's a you know, this is the exact situation Eloisa was in. Eventually what happened is the kids went to live with Dad for a while because they didn't like Mum's rules, and she was okay with that. Most women wouldn't be okay with that. They'd go, my kids have rejected me now and it's terrible now. But they spent, a few months with their dad and realised that life with Dad was all unrestricted but also not loving. No rules, no love, no teaching, no
personal interest in
them.
No
personal interest. So they come back to Mum, even with all the rules. And they now live by them because of it. So there's going to be temporary situations that happen when the two are in disagreement. And I would say if the two parents are in disagreement with regard to their parenting, then it's pretty unlikely they're going to stay together anyway. Because one of them is trying to impose principles and the other one isn't. So it's pretty unlikely you're going to stay together as parents. And so the key is to just, as the parent who wants to do the right thing, do the right thing. And just deal with the relationship as it as the problems develop.
Yeah, even if it means them separating. And
even if it means separating, getting divorced and everything. Even if all of that happens, yes.
But don't do that. Just, you've got to do, if you're going to do it God's way, you're going to feel through that as the party who says, oh no, I want change. I want change. I want God's way. I want God's definitions. It's, you don't, I'm leaving you. That's really premature.
You got to give the other person a bit of time, in the sense that when they see the advantages of parenting children in harmony with principle and actually feeling those principles, and they see the children changing, then if they're a wise person, they will look at it and go, yeah, that's because of my wife or my husband now applying those principles. And they will go, wow, yeah, that really worked. If they are more selfish than that and want the addictions with their children still and everything, they won't do that. They'll do exactly the opposite of that. They get all up in arms and say, no, you're wrong, and I'm leaving you now, and I'm going to fight you for the kids' custody, and what you're doing is abusive to the children, so I'm going to get custody. And a lot of people worry so much about what they view as their children that they would then back off living in harmony with the principle.
Yep.
My suggestion is to not do that. You live in harmony with the principle, even if it means you lose your children altogether, supposedly, because they're going to come back.
Yeah.
Every person in the long run does love law.
Yeah.
We've been built to live in harmony with law. And after a while, people respect if you're consistent.
Yes.
They will respect you, and that includes your own children, if you're consistent. If you're as consistent with yourself as you are with them, eventually they'll recognise that, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
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 I see that with children. They actually do like boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they feel, I feel they feel more safer with boundaries.
Well, that's exactly why God created boundaries for us.
Yeah.
For safety reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why the law of gravity was created, for safety reasons. The Earth's spinning at quite a velocity. If safety reasons weren't considered and there was no law of gravity, we'd be out in space within a few moments. It wouldn't take long, a few seconds, and we'd be out in space and we'd be dead.
Yeah.
God created that law for safety, and it's the same applies to all the emotional laws, the spiritual laws, the sexual laws that God created. They're all for our own safety.
Yeah. Can I just make one more point on the partner? One partner wants to do it. It's also very important when you're a sincere person, you're not going to force your partner, you've got to listen to these DVDs now, or these videos or these recordings. You've got to now adhere to what I'm hearing. That's trying to impose on the free will of another. The sincere person says, I've got changes to make.
I'm going to live it.
I'm going to live this way. Husband, wife, you don't have to listen to this AJ character. You don't have to. I'm just making changes. And these are important to me. And this is how. And when we make changes in our soul, these things, we're not going to force anyone to try to agree with them, because they're our changes. And also, we might make decisions based on them. We would share about them. We would be honest and open about them.
Well, not necessarily even. Like if I'm making a choice to live in harmony with the principle and Mary decides she's not going to, there's nothing I need to do but live in harmony with the principle.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, Mary will either hate my guts or she'll love me for living in the principle. If she hates me, she'll leave me. If she loves me, she'll probably stay.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. Where I see partnerships go wrong is either they're like, oh, well, you're not going to do this thing with me, so I'm leaving you, or you've got to listen. You've got to listen. Nag. And both of those things are not you making the personal shifts for yourself. They're you in an addiction to either avoid rejection by rejecting first, or avoid Well, it's really about avoiding rejection.
But it's also about avoiding disharmony, avoiding arguments, avoiding having to explain yourself, feeling unloved every time you've got to explain yourself.
Feeling unloved if you're doing something on your own and not together, and
all that. Yeah. There's so many emotions involved as to why a person would no longer live by principle and then go back to a situation which is in disharmony with the principle. There's so many emotional sort of reasons why they might do such things, but from God's perspective, they're all emotional excuses. Yeah. Okay. They're not reasons. Yeah. They're just excuses. They're excuses to excuse yourself from living in harmony with the principle for the so-called reasons that you value, which are all excuses for why you value those particular things that are out of harmony with love. So like if Mary and I have children, and of course we have had children, but if Mary and I have children, and Mary all of a sudden wants to apply the principles of God's truth with regard to running the family, and I don't want to, naturally there is going to be disharmony between the two of us. I'm gonna want to fight, right? Mary is going to have to explain, right, for a period of time at least, explain why the decisions are being made. But I'm still going to want to fight because I'm going to want to disagree because I want my addictions met and they're not getting met. So I'm going to disagree for sure. And any person in sin and error will always fight for their sin and error. They will. They'll always have a fight. They want to have a fight. The person who's living in harmony with truth won't want to fight. So sooner or later, the person who's living in harmony with truth is either going to say to the other ones, look, you want to keep fighting? I don't want to be here anymore. Or we stop fighting and we work through these issues properly as mature adults. Which one do you want? Because I'm not putting, what I'm doing is right, and I'm not putting up with this constant nag, fight, pressure, abuse from you. I'm not putting up with that. This is an issue of love. Do you even love me enough to stop doing that and start working through our issues, right? Now, if I go, no, I don't want to do that, you're wrong, right, then soon we're going to break up for sure. There's no way we're going to stay together, right? But it'll be because one of us lived in harmony with the principle, not because of some personal, pet peeve, addiction not being met. It'll be for the sake of a principle. You've got to get to the stage with God's principles that you're willing to die for them, because you may be required to die for them at some point. You might. When it comes to love of another, what happens if somebody says, pick up a gun, and you say, no, I don't want to, and they say, well, I'm going to shoot you if you don't, and then you say, fair enough. Or what if they say, they're going to shoot your child if you don't? What are you going to do? Right? You can't pick up the gun, the principle. You can't do it. Your child's going to get shot, and maybe you too, right? It's going to happen. There's not much you can do about it. It's if you live in harmony with principle to that point, then a small breakup in the family, it's minor, right? But it's a temporary thing.
I think the point is when you, not to undermine your point, that's a very good point, but even further to that point is that when you have a principle inside of you, you realise the cost of not upholding this principle
for everyone
is not just for me, not just the personal cost, but the cost to everyone is more than this temporary pain. Whether that's the death of my child, whether it's the death of myself, whether that's the loss of a relationship. The principle, I know by breaking the principle, there will be more pain. Yeah. This is the benefit of getting the principles into your soul.
But you've got to have faith in that, right?
Yeah.
The average person doesn't.
Yeah. And the average person, when you say, oh, yeah, I wouldn't pick up the gun to save my child, would be horrified to hear that.
Of course.
What do you mean you're not going to save your child?
Of course, yeah. This is why wars happen, right?
Yeah.
Because one group of people kill the children of another group of people. They all get up in arms and they want to kill the children of the other group of people. And before you know it, or kill the people who killed their children. And before you know it, now you got a war. This is how wars happen, by there being a disagreement with the principles. That's how it happens.
And it's very different to not doing everything you can to love and protect your child. but there's points where violence is not going to, that's harming other people's children.
Yeah.
How much do I'm actually saying it's okay to harm another child to protect this child? That doesn't even make logical sense, actually.
Yeah. I'll run in front of a bulldozer to protect a child.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to shoot another person, kill another person to protect the child.
Yeah. But you wouldn't also harm yourself, as in you wouldn't die for another child.
Well, in the moment, sometimes you don't think that.
Yeah.
You just go, like if
The
you saw a
instinct.
child crossing a road and there's cars going, you're probably not going to think about your own safety. You just go, this child's unsafe, I've got to grab him. And you might just run in and try to grab the child, and in that place you might get killed even. But that's to my mind, that's not perpetrating violence yourself. That's trying to save the child from violence.
Yeah.
Right? That's a different matter. But when it comes to perpetrating violence yourself in order to supposedly save a child, now you're killing other people's children in order to save yours. Now you're way out of harmony with principles of love and truth and equality and so forth. There's so many principles you're breaking that there's going to be terrible penalties on your soul and also the soul of others for that decision, right, to do those things.
Yeah.
So under those circumstances, no, I couldn't do it. But if I saw a car coming down the road and I saw a little child, running in front of the car, not being aware, I would probably run in front of the car to try to pick up the child.
Yeah.
Even if it meant that I might die doing it, or both of us might die doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's different than perpetrating violence to save somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very different.
Yeah.
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 The other subject that's a big subject with parents at the moment, because I think it's the first time we've ever had this as parents, is technology.
Yeah.
Should we pause? And
Yep.
And maybe have...
Should we have a break,
Yep.
a wee break, first, and then maybe just a little bit of question and answer about what we
we've
just
talked
discussed,
about.
and then we'll move on to this other
technology.
important subject.